Welcome to this week's Velocity Mindset Success Stories. My name is Ron Carr, and I'm the author of The Velocity Mindset. And on this special week, we want to wish you and your family a very happy, safe Thanksgiving holiday. Today is a great treat for all of us. I want to introduce our guest. Now, in 1975, our guest joined the Barry-Wehmiller company that only did $20 million at that time. As a trained CPA, Bob Chapman rose to the senior management ranks and became its CEO and chairman. After 100 acquisitions, Barry-Wehmiller today is a $3 billion capital equipment and engineering solutions firm. An article in Inc. magazine named Bob Chapman the number 3 CEO in the world at that time. 2 Harvard case studies have been written on Barry-Wehmiller, which are used to teach Harvard MBA students the act of leadership. The key to this great success story is how Bob Chapman led the company's transformation from traditional management practices to what they call truly human leadership, a people-centric approach where Barry-Wehmiller team members feel valued, cared for, and an integral part of the company's purpose. A sought-after speaker for his ideas about the powerful intersection of people-centric leadership and good business strategy, Chapman is intentional about using his platform as a business leader to build a better world. His book, Everybody Matters, which chronicles his journey and leadership philosophy, is a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And the first thing I want to tell everybody watching and listening to this program, if you are in leadership role of any kind, anywhere, you must, and I mean must, buy his book, Everybody Matters. Bob and I were talking on the same platform at an event, a management event. I heard him speak and I read his book. And I have to tell you, everything he talks about is one of your keys, or many of your keys, in developing velocity in your life and in your business. So, Bob, welcome to the show.
Ron, it's a pleasure to have a chance to share our passion for creating leaders in this world who care for the people they have the privilege of leading.
Yeah, that's what I love about you. So, listen, let me ask you this first question. I heard you say that leadership and parenting is identical. Can you explain how that goes?
Yeah, as I was developing deploying my leadership skills I learned in my MBA program at Michigan and undergraduate, and what I learned at Price Waterhouse, the same time Cynthia and I were raising 6 kids. And so I had a dual path of learning. I was trying to really fix a broken old business, but also be good stewards of these 6 precious lives that we've been blessed with. And as I look back, clearly shaping truly human leadership, what I learned about parenting was more important than what I learned in business school about leadership. Because what is parenting? When you talk to our team members, they all take very seriously these precious lives that come into their families through birth, adoption, or second marriage, that we all take extremely seriously. Well, what is leadership? The stewardship of these precious lives of people who walk in our doors and around the world who simply want to know that they matter. So parenting and leadership is identical, and many of the things we now teach at our university came from the things I learned about trying to be a good parent. So I would say to you, Simon Sinek and I say all the time, parenting and leadership identical. It's caring for the people that you have the privilege of having in your life, whether at work or at home. They're somebody's precious child that's been placed in your care.
Well stated. Now, in 1975, when you joined Barry-Wehmiller, you just mentioned, it was a broken company with old processes and it had to be, let's say, remade.
Yeah.
And you also built it through acquisitions. But I guess if I was to ask you what your number one product would be, how would you answer that?
Well, I think some organizational development professors from Washington University came over to interview me a few years ago because they'd heard about our culture. And after an hour-and-a-half interview, they looked at me in kind of amazement and said, "You're the first CEO we've ever talked to and interviewed that never talked about your product." Now, what popped out of me when they said that was, we've been talking about our product for the last hour and a half. It is our people. I will not leave this earth proud of the big capital equipment we build for great companies. I will leave leave this earth proud of the people who did that on our team. So our focus is our people, and our statement above our university is we build great people who do extraordinary things. So our focus is on the human side of business, and the outcome is good products, good services, good growth.
So we talk about the same thing, but you actually built a $3 billion company using the same principles. How, when you came to Barry-Wehmiller in 75, how did you discover truly human leadership? I mean, it was all broken. People weren't motivated. You had issues everywhere. Can you share how that journey started?
Well, I actually started in '69. I came from 2 years at Price Waterhouse after graduate school. And my dad invited me to join the family company that he had bought into in the 50s. The Wehmiller and Barry families had started in 1885 and had been involved in the company and had exhausted their heritage and were ready to transition. And my dad invested $30,000 in the 1950s. Ended up borrowing some money to buy out the Wehmiller families in the 60s. So the company became the Chapman family company in the 1960s. But he was able, when he joined the company from 53 to 75, he was able to keep it alive, but it was still 100-year-old technology for the brewing industry with strong competition internationally. So I would say to you, it was alive, but barely. And so I pretty much deployed what I learned in my business school about organic growth and innovation and motivation. And I was, because the company was, in quotes, so tired at the time I joined it, pretty much near the end of its life cycle, it seemed like any idea I had was brilliant because it's, and seriously, it was fun because the company was so tired. But it was, again, 18 million, making a little bit of money, marginal financial performance. And then he died suddenly in 1975 after we'd worked together for 6 years. The interesting thing, my job title when he approached me at Price Waterhouse to join him was, he said, I need somebody I can trust. So I joined the company, never having thought of being a part of the company, never really having any interest in the company. But my dad all of a sudden saw his son materialize in terms of passing the CPA exam, getting an MBA. So all of a sudden he saw this kind of unfocused kid doing well in the field he was in. So it created a great relationship with my dad, which I had not particularly had because we just hadn't much in common. So it was a fabulous last 6 years. He suddenly passed away of a heart attack. And I deployed the things I'd learned in business school about cutting costs, trying to improve cash flow, all those things. And I would say to you, it was 1997 where I had pretty much been successful with some ups and downs in that journey, but I'd been successful and I bought a company in South Carolina. I flew down to be there the first day. It was about a $55 million company. So important acquisition. I walk into, it was March of 97. I walked into the lunchroom to have a cup of coffee as the office was opening. Nobody knew me. I didn't know them. So they just kind of ignored me. And I was just watching people. And it was March, so everybody was betting on March Madness in the pools. And they were having fun. You could just see the fun talking about which teams won, which teams they thought were going to be in the Final Four. And the closer it got to 8 o'clock, you could just see the fun go out of their body when they went to work. So my first revelation was that day when in hindsight, when I said to myself, why can't business be fun? Why do we call it work? And I started deploying some ideas on aligning value creation, fun, and games. And I just wanted people to have fun. But what happened is revenue went up dramatically, but joy went up by 1,000%. That was the first revelation. The second was we were in church a few years later. My mentor was director of our church. And one day I got up from the service and I looked at Cynthia and I said, Ed, our rector has only got us for 1 hour a week. We have people in our care for 40 hours a week. We are 40 times more powerful than the church to influence people's lives in our span of care. As I walked out of that church, I went to the next step. And I said, oh my God, business could be the most powerful force for good in the world if we simply cared about the people we had the privilege of leading. That was the second revelation. The third occurred a couple of years later, again at a wedding in Aspen. A friend of mine was walking his daughter down the aisle, and typical, wonderful, nice service. And as my friend got his daughter to the altar, he said, her mother and I give our daughter to be wed to this young man. And he sat down next to his bride, his wife. And all of a sudden I said to myself, we're all in awe of this precious young man and young lady getting married. But all 12,000 people that work for us in the world are just like them. There's somebody's precious son or daughter that's been placed in our care. And the way we treat them will have a profound effect on their life. And that day, the most significant, the culmination of these three transformative revelations, that day was the biggest turn, because in hindsight, I always looked at the people in our organization as there for my success. I need an engineer, I need an accountant, I need a receptionist, etc. And that day I realized they're not functions. They're somebody's precious child that's been placed in my care. And that changed everything for me. It completely reversed my view of people that I had the privilege of leading. When I saw them not as functions for my success, but I saw them as somebody's precious child that's been placed in my care, and the way I treat them would have a profound impact on them. So those are the three revelations that moved me from what I call management, which means the manipulation of others for your success, to leadership, which is the stewardship of the lives you are privileged to lead in your span of care in your business. So when you look at those people in your span of care as somebody's precious child, to me, it changes everything about your sense of responsibility.
So it's fun, care, and precious child. Is that how we would call the three
I would
revelations?
say, why can't business be fun? We have people in our care for 40 hours a week, and everybody is somebody's precious child.
All right, great. So let's go back to 1997 then, when you acquired this company in South Carolina, and you wanted to make it fun. That was the first thing, the first step, I guess, in the journey that you took.
Yes, yes.
How did you make it fun for them?
Well, again, for your listeners today, with no background, in other words, I had not an ounce of thought. These things, I'm reconstructing what happened in my brain. So my first meeting happened to be with our customer service team. Because of the $55 million in revenue of this company, I think 21 million was aftermarket parts and service. And so it's a significant part of the business. And I was just going to meet with them. I'm a creative person, but not a disciplined person. So I just went in to meet with them, the customer service team, the people that answer the phone, that take the orders for the spare parts. I sat down and talked to them. And after introducing myself, out of me popped, we're going to play a game. And I hadn't given it 1 ounce of thought, never tried it, never done it. It just popped out of me. And I said, whoever sells the most parts each week wins $100. And if the team makes the team goal, the team wins $100. Now, they were really taken back by that. So, no, Mr. Chapman, that won't work. I handle fresh produce. I handle snack food, and that won't work. And for every reason they said it would not work, I had a reason it would. And I'd never thought of it, never done it, never heard about it. It just all came out of me by watching people play March Madness. I only know that in hindsight, because I didn't sit there and think, what did I just see? Right. It just came out of me. And so guess what happened? Revenue went up by 20%, but joy went up by 1,000%. I went back to this team some weeks later and I said, what happened? I just wanted you to have fun. It never occurred to me that revenue would, if somebody calls in and wants to order a gear, they're not going to order two. What happened? And this one lady said to me, she said, Mr. Chapman, I always thought I was nice to the customers, but boy, I'm really nice now because I want to win. I said, well, that's interesting. And then another gentleman said, Mr. Chapman, when the phone would ring before, if you were working on a project for another customer, you'd kind of somebody else pick up the phone because you're going to have to answer the phone and do the research. So you weren't really motivated. Now, because we want to win, we're actually going to the switchboard operator and saying, how do you decide who gets which calls? Because I want the calls. So it went from really not wanting to pick up the phone to being motivated to pick up the phone. And another gentleman said, Mr. Chapman, if when a customer calls in and we needed engineering input to give the right response to the customer, before we would write up a requisition, that's the form, send it to engineering. When it would come back with the answers, then we would call the customer, a week, two, whatever. Now we walk it over to the engineering department and ask them the question because we want to get back quickly because we want to try and meet the customer's needs and win the game. So we found them texting each other at night, how are we doing? So there was an individual component, a team component, and this celebration. So very few people in the company can go home at night and say, how did you do? I said, well, it seemed that it was okay. I didn't get fired. Nobody yelled at me. In this case, we had a digital readout. They knew exactly where they were individually and as a team playing a sport with a scoreboard. It never occurred to me. So that again, it made the business fun. It made taking orders from customers fun, not work. So anyway, that was the first revelation.
So would you say in the yes, no answer that this even worked for some of your harder core audiences, meaning let's say union workers or, factory
absolutely. It works around. We've now done it around the world. It works workers' councils in Europe, and it's a universal truth. People love having fun.
So how did you scale it up?
How did we scale it up?
Yeah.
Well, we sat down and listened to people tell us. I mean, I went into another division because I said, holy cow, what have we found here? So I went to another division in Akron, Ohio, and I said, and the team came back to me and said, Bob, the team has heard about that. They don't want to do it because you need to listen to them. So I flew up to Akron and I sat down with the team. I said, what's going on? I said, look, Mr. Chapman, we're a team. You're going to pit us against each other. If I'm sitting there working on something and somebody else is answering the phone, that's not going to be fair. It's not fair, Mr. Chapman. You're going to turn us against each other. And I said, because I had seen what it does, I said, I'm not here to do a survey. I'm here to tell you, you're going to do it and you're going to have fun. Guess what? Because I'm CEO and chairman, they did it. And guess what? They had a ball. The very lady that was so upset with me came back and said, you see how well I'm doing now? Because remember, before we did this, people walked in, sat down, answered the phone, got back to the customer, answered the phone, got back to the customer. There was no motivation. I mean, if you went home at night, you'd say, how'd you do? And you'd say, well, fine.
Right.
A couple of people upset with me. Now they could see their score. They could see how they're doing. And what we found is they engaged their family because now that they'd win $100, and get recognition. It's a combination of the $100 and the recognition because before we didn't track how much each person entered. It was just total orders and nobody really knew their individual. And so we got better customer service because people got back quicker. People felt rewarded because they now realized how much revenue they had generated. And they enjoyed competing because there was a team component. Because if somebody did well, the team is going to win. And we'd have people texting each other on Friday night. What if somebody comes in Saturday and we could get a couple of texts and we could win the game? And so it just became a game, just like March Madness was.
Right.
Stimulated by March Madness. So winning, we align value creation to fun.
So when you did this, you made a point that you started recognizing people also, which wasn't done before. And I always say that recognizing people for their efforts is important. You need to celebrate that. But you also just said something really important that I know I read it in your book, the families got involved. So if they won and they were recognized for it, now they're going home in a really good mood, all pumped up about their value, and they're probably becoming a better parent or spouse at that moment. Would you agree?
Yeah, because when people have fun, when it goes from work to fun, it affects your stress level. It affects your sense of purpose. I always say it's our responsibility as leaders to send everybody home knowing that who they are and what they do matters. Okay.
Yep.
In this case, it was particularly easy because what popped out of me that day was the individual and team component.
Sure.
We actually had a lady in Baltimore that was pretty. We had a game. If you did more than $10,000 in a day, you got an extra $10, whatever it was. I think again, this one lady was struggling to get to 10,000 a day. Maybe it was, I think it was 100,000 a day. She'd come up at 80,000, 75,000, and she felt bad because the team was doing well and she was doing well, but she wasn't hitting that little bogey of if you do 100,000 a day, you get an extra $10, whatever it is. One day, one of the team members saw she was at like 80,000. He had a $21,000 order in his hand. He walked over and he said, "Would you like to enter this so you could get to 100,000?" And she cried. Okay.
Wow.
The sense of a team playing their position well, recognizing one of the most important things we do as leaders is recognize people in appropriate, timely, thoughtful ways. Not a note on their birthday, not an anniversary of 25 years of service, but the little things that they do. And that is the skill we teach in our university. The three things we teach are empathetic listening. That is the greatest of all leadership skills, followed by how do you let people know they matter? We call it recognition and celebration, catching people things doing right. And that's a skill. It's a teachable skill to do it in a way that really touches people. And quite often in our recognition events, we surprise the recipient of the recognition and get their family there behind the screen. So when Mayor Bill are asked to come forward to get their recognition, their family is there to see them appreciate for it. And it becomes a very emotional event for everybody.
Yeah, I was at we held our Chief Revenue Officer mastermind group that I facilitated in the headquarters of a California Pizza Kitchen. We were invited by the CEO, GJ Hart, and he pulled me out to watch exactly one of those recognition events for one of the employees with the family there. And what a huge impact that had. We only have a few minutes left. So let me just ask you a couple of quick questions for all those doubting Thomases.
Yes.
So that fun factor is what you started with in 1997. What year did you stumble upon the CARE revelation?
What year did I stumble upon the what?
The CARE revelation.
Oh, the CARE. Well, that was probably 2000 at church. And okay. when you think of the issues we face in the world today, even though prior to the pandemic we had the lowest employment in 50 years, we had a booming stock market prior to the pandemic, but we had the highest level of anxiety and depression we've ever had. Why? We had peace and prosperity. People had good jobs, good paying jobs. They could change jobs and improve their income. Why do we have anxiety and depression? Because people, my view, people don't feel cared for. They feel used for somebody else's purpose, not just in business, in nonprofit, universities, military, government. I speak in all parts of our society. The problem we have in the world today, in my simple view, is that people don't feel cared for. And that is a skill that is teachable. So our leadership program in our university, our internal university, teaches people how to care for the people you have the privilege of leading, giving them a grounded sense of hope for the future so they can raise their family. Because what we learned in our university, when we teach people how to be leaders, 95% of the feedback we get from our team members is how it affects their marriage in a positive way and their relationship with their kids. It never occurred to me in my education, in my journey through life, that the way I would run my company would affect people's marriage or their relationship with their kids or their sense of joy and satisfaction. We use people for our organizational success. We don't care for people for their success. Until we change that, the issues we face in our society with our kids, with family, divorce, and all these other issues won't go away because people don't feel cared for. They feel used. And we in business can be the example. And Simon Sinek's got a fabulous expression. In the military, we honor those who give of themselves in service of others. In business, we give bonuses to people who sacrifice others in service of themselves. Simon said, if in the military we can teach people that your primary responsibility is the men and women in your care, why can't we teach business leaders your primary responsibility is the men and women in your care? And the answer is we can, we are, and we are doing it, and it profoundly affects people's lives. And we can begin healing the brokenness in this world if we simply care for the people we have the privilege of leading.
In the velocity mindset, we also say that as a leader, your job is to make your people successful. End of sentence.
Yes.
That's your number one responsibility. Let me ask you this question. You did 100 acquisitions, right? We only got
Yep.
about 4 minutes left. Would Barry-Wehmiller today be as successful with those 100 acquisitions without you implementing the human element as you just described in this show?
Well, the Harvard case study that's used by, in this case, some executive MBAs were at Harvard, and I was asked to sit on the session. They kind of asked the question, is Barry-Wehmiller successful? We've grown to a $3.5 billion company. Our share price has gone up 14% a year, compounded for 25 years. So we are proud that we have a great, very professional board and investor base. But the question was put before these executive MBAs at Harvard, is Barry-Wehmiller successful because of its culture or its strategy? And they voted after a day of discussion that we are 75% voted we are successful because of our culture. And then Jan Rifkin, the chair of the MBA program, said, Bob, what feedback would you give this group? And I stood up, never having thought about it. And I said, I understand why you think it's our culture, but it's a little bit like Ferrari designing the ultimate high performance engine. If you design that engine, unless you put premium fuel in it, it will not perform to its potential. Our first responsibility as business leaders is design a business model that is a high performance business model, which is your Ferrari engine. And then the culture is the premium fuel you pour into that engine that makes it perform. Okay. You can't just be nice to people. Okay. It is not being nice to people. You've got to make sure you have a good business model that will protect those people you invite from, changes in market, changes in consumer demand, et cetera. So we designed a robust business model. Our Ferrari engine and our truly human culture is the premium fuel we pour into it. You can't put premium fuel in a poorly designed engine and think it's going to perform well. It's a strong combination of a well-designed business model combined with a premium fuel that will allow that to perform at its highest level. And that's what I would share with you that we are doing. Our culture is the premium fuel that goes in, that empowers our business model.
I love that analogy. So what you're saying is you need both.
Well, yeah, right. It's not just about being nice. Okay. There's a lot of nice people with good intentions whose business go bankrupt and they hurt people. Some people say it's about getting the right people on the bus. I say it's actually about building a safe bus, which is your business model. And then you need leaders who know how to drive that bus safely. Okay. And then anybody that gets on the bus is going to be fine. But you've got to have a good business model. If you don't have a good job with good job security, you put your family at risk should you get let go and not be able to support their means. If you don't design a good business model, you can't be good to your people. And our job as senior leaders is to make sure we have constantly thinking about, do we have the right design, the high performance engine, and then people will actualize that and allow it to realize its potential. Remember, we live in a world, Ron, right now where 88% of all people feel they work for an organization that doesn't care about them. 65% of all people would give up a salary increase if they could fire their boss. We have a 20% increase in heart attacks on Monday mornings. And you wonder what's wrong? Okay, we have never learned in our universities to teach people to care. We've taught people to use others for financial success. And it doesn't matter how you do it as long as it's legal, because then you can write big checks to charity and everybody will think you're wonderful. The greatest act of charity is not the checks we write to the Heart Association, Cancer Society. The greatest act of charity is the way we treat the people we have the privilege of leading.
I love that. What a way to end the show. The greatest act of charity you could do as a business owner or a leader is how you treat your people on a daily basis. So listen, I think many of you, if not all of you, have found this to be very stimulating as I have. If you want more, here's a couple of ways that you can get more of Bob Chapman. Number one, buy his book, Everybody Matters. It's a book that needs to be on your bookshelf, but it also needs to be read or listened to. And number two, you'll see on your screen the URL for Bob Chapman, which is https://bobchapman.co, C-O, no M. So it's bobchapman.co. Bob, I can't thank you enough for taking some of your time that you really didn't have to be here with us today. I know you're on a mission to change the world because, one of the premises of the velocity mindset is what would the world look like if everybody acted like a leader and not as a victim of circumstance. You truly have led your life that way. I so appreciate what you've done for me through your words and what you're doing for others. And I wish you and your family all the best for a very happy Thanksgiving.
Ron, thank you for helping me share this message, because I truly believe the simple accountant from Ferguson was blessed with the message could heal the brokenness we're all feeling if we all became not managers, bosses, and survivors. So thank you for the privilege of being on your show.
Thank you. And to all of you listening again, we wish you and your families a very heartfelt Thanksgiving message. Please be good to others, and we will see you again next week with the incredible Scott McCain.